hear me? Yeah. Not live? Okay. Hi, my name is David Major. I work for the Marine Corps University with the Marine Corps Command Staff Distance Education Program. So basically for the Marine Corps, for majors getting their professional military education, Marine Corps allows 20% of its major to attend resident. And so I write a course for the non-resident program, which consists about 80% of the majors. So before I begin this talk, I want to mention one of my inspirations here. This is from General Breckinridge. He basically started the Marine Corps College back in the 20s. And this is an article that he published back in 1929 in the Marine Corps Gazette. It says that there's no progress without criticism. Every improvement is born of criticism that resulted in discord. The process seems to run this wise. Curiosity leads to investigation, which opens discussion, which gives rise to opinion, which breeds criticism, which results in improvement. Therefore, we must cultivate curiosity, encourage investigation, stimulate discussion, inspire criticism that will result in improvement. And you'll like this one, Ben. All this beseeks wide freedom, and though an acute divergence from the arbitrary. General Breckinridge, 1929, Marine Corps Gazette. So with that inspiration, how we educate design in the distance program. My design journey, I guess, started back when I was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, and I was assigned to the Marine Corps University as an instructor for the Marine Corps Resident Command Staff course. During that time, I met General Van Riper. Lieutenant General Van Riper was a three-star general, and at this time he was retired, and he was doing a system theory elective, and this was circa 2007 through 2009. General Van Riper met Shimon Neve at Leavenworth with the exercise at the School of Advanced Military Studies was executing circa 2005-2006. General Van Riper also brought with him John Schmidt, who wrote Warfighting for the Marine Corps. And in it, Schmidt basically interpreted Shimon Neve's writings on SOD, and he came up with a writing called Systemic Concept for Operational Design, which was published by TCOM and I still use as a white paper, and this occurred back in 2006. So I knew I was going to retire one day from the Army, and I was offered a job to write a course for the non-resident program for Marine Corps majors, which is about 80% of our students. Our students are divided up in 50 seminars from the East Coast in Camp Lejeune all the way out to Okinawa. And each seminar will have about 10 students. So I knew I was going to write a course for that. Design was certainly an interest of mine. Conversing with John Schmidt and General Van Riper, and also what the Army School of Advanced Military Studies was doing. So I thought it was important enough to at least have a lesson of operational design in my course. So I wrote a lesson after I retired in 2010, 2011. And I thought it was a pretty good lesson. It basically demonstrates students how to organize your thoughts, to look at a complex problem, to come up with a practical solution. And then each academic year we do a curriculum review board. And so my lesson didn't necessarily get a lot of accolades as I anticipated. But I think to Mr. Gilbert's point today that you really can't teach design, that it has to be kind of demonstrated. So with that said, I thought it was necessary to add a design exercise to my operational art course, and that design exercise became the final assessment per se. And each year I kept on improving my design curriculum and how ways students can organize their thoughts to deal with complex problems. So I took a scenario from John Schmidt. It's basically a fictional country called Bafanga in Africa. I don't know if you had that ever done that design exercise before, but it had enough complexities in it, except for maybe some Tyrannosaurus Rex thrown into it, but it was a pretty complex problem. The students did well, but still, there was a lacking of critical thinking in that aspect. That the students weren't necessarily looking at the problem holistically. And this goes back, how do you teach, systems thinking? How do you teach critical thinking? And I came across this book called The Age of the Unthinkable. I don't know if any of you have read that before, by the name of Ramo. And in it, he mentions an individual by Dr. Nesbitt, Richard Nesbitt out of the University of Michigan. And Dr. Nesbitt is a psychologist. And so one of his graduate students who's from Asia says, Dr. Nesbitt, you look at the world a lot differently than I do. And Dr. Nesbitt asks the students, well, go ahead and explain this. He says, well, the Easterners, we kind of look at the world as a context, where the Westerners kind of look at the object. And so Dr. Nesbitt created this experiment. So he had Eastern students and Western students come in. He showed different images, and in those images there's like an object. And so Dr. Nesbitt was able to track their eye movements. And certainly the Eastern students had a lot variation of glances that was measured as compared to Western students. So yes, we have that fundamental flaw from the West that we kind of narrow in on the object. Dr. Nesbitt also, with his continuous research, that depending where you come on the West, for the United States, for example, it may depend on how you look at things differently, right? So we have this. The Westerners have this inherent bias, right? And we kind of focus on this tiger more so than the context of the forest. Now, this tiger, for the United States perspective, could be American Indians. It could be communism. It could be terrorism. It could be illegal immigrants, and the scope of this could be either bigger, right? So in some cases, the tiger could be just a bobcat, right? And so how do you get students to kind of broaden their aperture, right? Knowing that they come to the classroom with confirmation bias. And someone was like, no, sir, I don't necessarily have confirmation bias, and like, yeah, you do, you do, And I think it's important to let them know that, that from the West, you look at the world differently, and therefore you're kind of more focused on the object instead of the whole. Next slide, please. So what we try to get our learners to let them know, yes, we have this problem, but how can you break away from that? And what we try to do is try to introduce them a concept of taking a view from the International Space Station approach. And I don't know if you ever read anything of Carl Sagan, but the pale blue dot, that's what type of perspective that we want to try to give our learners, and kind of break away from your nationalist views and ideas, but kind of take a Commander Spock's approach on a phenomena that you may be witnessing, and therefore you'll identify all the variables that are occurring. Next slide, please. So from this International Space Station look, we're also trying to have them look at it scientifically. As an environmentalist or the ecologist will kind of look at a certain phenomena that may be going in nature. And Dr. Chris Bashford wrote a strategic doctrine for the Marine Corps. He did this back in 1996. So what Dr. Bashford says, fortunately the physical sciences have begun to embrace the class of problems posed by social interaction like politics and war. The appropriate imagery, however, is not that of Newtonian physics, whether we need to think in terms of biology and particularly ecology. To survive over time, the various members of the ecosystem must adapt not only to the external environment but to each other. These agents these agents compete, they cooperate, they consume, they are consumed, join and divide, and so on. A system created by such interaction is called a complex adaptive system, written back in 1996. So how can you use ecology, evolution as a model to kind of look at strategic, complex problems? Next slide, please. So what we had to do is kind of look at what Dr. Bashford's work and also kind of looking at other evolutionary work and ecologist work, is that all systems, whether ecosystems, all biological systems, has a propensity for evolving, right? And for as well as trying to develop in a harmonious system within inside that ecosystem. It's in its nature. And so when we're looking at a complex problem, we're kind of identifying the variables that's keeping that system from evolving. And we call those system inhibitors. We also look at variables that kind of keep that system on course, like enablers. So enablers could be phosphate nitrogen, you put on, which would be fertilizer, right? You put that fertilizer on the plant grows, but at the same time, it's kind of killing the microorganisms in the soil. Yeah, that plant will grow, but it won't necessarily have the same nutrients like it did in the past. Matter of fact, today, plants that we get from the store, if it's not grown organically, has less nutrients than plants that have grown from fertilizer. Another thing is kind of like what's the adaptable traits in that system. So we know that all system wants to self-organize. It's in its nature. So we also kind of look at adaptable traits. Adaptable traits could be a diverse economy, education, women's rights. What are those things in that system that will help it adapt over time? Next slide, please. So this comes out of the Marine Corps design methodology. It was published back in 2017. So the Marine Corps design methodology kind of takes what the Army did, but I kind of like this middle imagery here. So all systems, which is to the left, have a propensity. And if you kind of look at Sun Tzu and Taoism, they talk about SHIH, S-H-I-H, which is propensity. And that what MDM talks about, Marine Corps design methodology talks about, is understand the propensity of that system, that natural trend of that system. Certainly those variables have a certain propensity to it and will have a certain outcome. Sometimes when we have alternative goals, what's at the top, which is all the way up to the top, may not necessarily match with that propensity, as well as the enemy may have alternative goals down that's at the bottom and may not meet that propensity. So what are the things, those variables that will cause that natural propensity? At top, we may want to have a Amazon rainforest. At the bottom, it may be a desert. But actually, the propensity of that system will probably be just a savanna grassland, right? And from a Chinese mindset, sure, propensity, how they do strategy is conditions and consequences. Instead of the Western approach, ends, ways, and means, establish conditions upstream for desired consequences downstream. Next slide, please. So in this case, we'll use Vietnam. So you have a propensity of the Vietnam system. You have U.S. means and ways injecting energy into that system, trying to get the U.S. goal different democracy as a Brazilian rainforest. On the bottom part, you have Vietnam, North Vietnam's injecting energy into that system, trying to get to a certain direction. Up to the top, millions of dollars, 56,000 lives. But where are we at today? We have certainly accepted a communist capitalist, and Vietnam is our number one, or the United States is Vietnam's number one trading partner, no one partner against China's expansion. It evolved in that system. Even though when the Vietnam communist control, that system evolved into what it happened today. So even it really can't keep that energy at the bottom. It had to evolve for. So what we're trying to do now is develop a ecological model, an evolutionary model to help with design thinking. That's it.
Well, first I'm just going to start by thanking the organizers. And if things run so smoothly, it's because there are not 100 worker bees, but let's say perhaps 10 worker bees behind us doing all the work. And I know what it is because I organized it last year. And that's why for the first time I enjoy my time so much because I don't have to take care of this. So thank you so much to the organizer, and thank you so much for taking the great experience we had last year and continuing our journey with it. And let's see where it's going to go. Yes, great. Okay, so since I only have 14 minutes, I wonder what would be the best use of my time here. And I'd like to start like in a very Canadian way and apologize to to the newcomers here, because I think that the best thing I could do with these 14 minutes is to present my design education project and try to get as many people interested in it as possible. So I'm going to refer to some debates that those who have been into this community knows, but perhaps for newcomers it's going to be perhaps something odd. So but we can talk afterwards. So my goal today is just to pitch this project, and I will not give you the details because it's a design project. We have one of our colleagues, Brett Nesbitt, that is always hammering us saying we should practice what we preach. Usually we talk about design education and all that, but we don't use design to do anything about it. And I suggest we do it with a major educational project. Okay, and I will do that by addressing 5 challenges that you can find in the literature and also in the military design practice that can serve as a way for us to produce something new. So basically, just a story to start. Lieutenant Colonel Anne Raffenstein is here today, and she retired last year, and then the college was a bit in trouble because like, what do we do with all the design stuff? And they were like, oh, thankfully there's one of her neighbor just facing her office that knows a bit about this. So Philippe, can you take care of this? Yes, of course. And I think that building on what Anne started, we really did a good job last year. We had just amazing comments, so that this year it was like almost like a blank check for me, thanks to this work. And by the way, the Dragon's Den was an amazing idea. Thanks Anne for that. That's how we closed the design exercise last year. So for me, I was like a kid receiving the best the best gift ever. You know, it's like you can do almost whatever you want with certain amount of hours with the design components. So what do you do with this? You know, of course I was really excited, but it's a bit daunting to try to teach design to an audience that's maybe more or less familiar with it. So when you look at, let's say you want to design the curriculum, you want to make this a unique experience for your students, you are in trouble because the literature will not help you. There is nothing out there that is accessible enough for newcomers who would like to learn about design from a military perspective. There are 3 sources you can dig in. The first, that is cherished by Ofra and my friend Philippe Dufort, is to dig into how great historical military commanders were thinking like designers and look at their design thinking process, and let's dissect that. Another way to do so, which is, I would say, the most popular, is to dig into external fields that are producing educational content on design. So mostly management, architecture, and other fields. So for instance, at SAMS, they use the All Designers Think by Brian Lawson. Keys Doors is one of his new book is really useful as well. We used it with our colonels last year, which more or less great success. And that's the new one I just read in the plane. So it's no longer good to be a reflective practitioner. You got to be a critically reflective practitioner. But anyway, the issue with these books is that yes, they are very accessible, but they never cover the military or security context, which is totally different from the context of management or of architecture, for instance. So when our students just open the book, it's like, okay, I can get the idea, but they get to the case study, it's like, how might we better design the entrance of the Sydney Opera? So for military practitioners, like, what is this? I don't connect the dots. So there's really something missing there. Another very popular way of translating this knowledge is to go in what has been done before and trying to take very complex idea and distill them into more, let's say, accessible forms with more or less success. Because when we translate, we betray what is there before. It will never give justice to the initial idea. And some people betray more than others, so to speak. But I think that what JSOU did, and you'll see we really like to praise one another in this community. What JSOU did with their flipped classroom is, I think, close to the ideal that I have in mind. And especially they are using the movie Arrival, so that's amazing. But anyway, just to say that the whole story of design thinking in the military can be summarized as a struggle over translating very complex notions. And in this struggle, well, there are two camps. Basically, the way you really want to summarize this, simplify this, the purists who would say we gotta follow design principles and we should not try to simplify them too much. That ended up being marginal because it's so complicated that newcomers would just flee. And the pragmatist, who would just try to distill it so much that you would not get any design in the end. You would not reach the what you could see as a transformation in the mindset of your students, which is the initial goal of design. So I would say instead of instead of being frustrated, like I like design theory, I'm a theorist, I'm an academic. So instead of being frustrated because some of my students oversimplify the things, why don't we take this as a challenge, for ourselves, and develop a product that will try to maximize accessibility while minimizing the betrayal of these ideas. The third challenge is that when we think about producing something in education, we always have in the back of our mindset a textbook. So when we were planning the first IMDC, my superior and some of our founders said, you got to produce a textbook. Textbook, the printing press that dates back from the 15th century, as if we don't have a better technology to reach our students. Well, the more times goes, the more education will be digital. So I think we need to think beyond the textbook, and we got to try to integrate as many medium as possible. Because indeed, we need a textbook to reach our generals. Indeed, they like paper stuff, But we need something, more advanced, like a tablet app or something like that to reach younger people. And I think that the possibilities that offer technology for design education are endless, and we are not well equipped as design educator to know all these technologies. So with funding, and if we get this working, indeed, as part of the design team for this project, we should recruit app developers that could open more possibilities to develop this than what we can think about. The other thing is that I think possibilities are endless, and I just have perhaps a lame idea here, but imagine you have an app on your tablet and you want to the goal is to visualize something, create a concept, and you have somebody who's drawing at the same time somewhere else. And then you can have a random pairing where you have a conversation with this person. So possibilities to use technology to learn design in the military are endless and underexploited. The fourth one, the fourth challenge is that the way we work is that we are all into our respective organization, and we all try to produce great design education programs, great design, let's say, platforms or materials to learn about it. Well, my case is that why don't we just join our forces? Instead of saying, well, this is the CFC design education platform or the JSOU design platform, why don't we join force and say, well, this is the IMDC design platform? That could evolve year after year, and we could pass the leadership of this platform year after year. And to build on Dan, who came here today, well, why don't we just keep the converts in these design teams to produce this product? Why don't we also invite the critical voices? Because I think that there are many promises of design, but there are many dangers also if we apply this in a security context. And this voice has to be heard and part of design education. So among the dangers of design, we've got many cases. And I was just to relate back to creativity, my favorite actor of all time, Daniel Day-Lewis, decided he would stop acting. And I really wonder why, after playing a role. And what he discovered is that, well, it's not worth it. Creativity is not worth it. It's too harmful to him, to his family, in his process of creation, that he will just stop doing this. I think personally that creativity is too addictive for these people to really stop this. So you will find him in a movie in a couple of years. But just to say that there are personal dangers to this, and also systemic dangers. I don't know if some of you saw the movie Brexit. I don't know if it's really focused on the fact, but let's say the guy who was the planner of the exit campaign really thought like a designer. He's a perfect designer, and it worked. And in the end, he kind of backed off of his own creation, just because he just saw the consequences. So I think that the dangers of design thinking need to be integrated in this platform and in the way we teach design thinking, not only the promises of it or the romanticization of creating nice ideas. Okay. And then it's not only what if. If we go with this project, it's more how might we address all these challenges instead of seeing them as obstacles. I think that this community of practice is ready for such a challenge. There are many reasons, but I would say that the first one is that, well, we have the will and we have the capability. Here you will not find a community of military designers as, I would say, as strong as this one. There's nothing else like that in the world. So I think it is our role, our responsibility to set the standard in design education in the military domain around the world. And in terms of capability or even will, look at what we achieved, only in 2-3 years. That's crazy. Especially JSOU in 2016, another one, and another one coming in Australia, I think in August. So, and I'll have time to work on this, because I'll be on research leave in Copenhagen for 2 years. So I think we really have the capability to do something big with this. The second one, and you can argue if you think that I'm wrong, but I think that this community is converging in their way of looking and practicing design. When Ben released his article in Small Wars, his recent one on the multidisciplinary approach to design, I was about to release my blog with Paul Mitchell on how we practice design at CFC, and I was like, oh my God, it's just exactly the same ideas. I think that we reach a converging point, especially in design principles, not necessarily in practice or in metas and all that. And this is the necessary, I would say, convergence to build something together. And the third is love. I mean, there's a lot of love in this community. And you need this to do great things. We're very close to Liverpool, so I was like, I got to put something about the Beatles in there. No, and this is true. I mean, when we invited Nathan and others, every time we do design activities at the college, there is something special. And I think that this thing that is special that everybody can feel is that, well, this community is tied together. Is that there's a camaraderie that you don't find elsewhere. We'll go to ISA, Antoine, in a couple of weeks, and I don't think you see the same kind of friendship among people who are connected together for a common cause. And I think this is very useful to produce something big. Good. So I'd like to know what you think about that. So whenever you see me, just shake my hands, write me an email if you'd like to participate in this project. If you'd like to become a partner, if your school would like to join as well, just give me a shout. And right now we are in the funding process. I already submitted a couple of grants. Some of you already had to get their name inside. It was a very complicated process. But in the end, that's how we start big things. Thank you.
If people already uploaded questions, yes, but they can't read them. So let's see.
Yeah, sorry, I'll read it, Ofra.
Yeah. Can each of the speakers, I'm reading for you. Can each of the speakers tell us about their biggest failure in terms of the application of design thinking? Thanks in thanks in anticipation. Challenges. Richard, you actually started you talked about one in your...
Right, so some of the biggest challenges, first of all, are our students and their makeup, and try to get them think critically and creatively. Let them know that this is how you view the world, and this is ways to expand your aperture. But again, for my program, the non-resident, we have 50 seminars, which includes 50 instructors from North Carolina all the way to Okinawa. And so I can't get all my instructors in one room. So the students have propensity for learning, but then again, we have to make sure my instructors are on the same board. So that takes a lot of work in developing instructor material for them in order to teach design.
I'll tell a quick story. It's not a military design one, but I think it might play better. I once designed a strategy for trying to get a job. It was a job that I was particularly unqualified for in software sales. So if anybody from IBM is still around, I want to talk to you later and see if I'm ready. But I really wanted this job very, very badly. And I've been thinking about the different ways in which I could get my foot in the door. I emailed back and forth with the hiring manager, and she looked at my credentials, and I wasn't a good fit for the gig. Undeterred, I came up with a creative strategy for this. I designed a way to breach the building in order to get in, as I figured if I could just get my face and sort of name and resume and handshake, I could get the gig, right? So I was reflecting on this and using some creative thinking techniques, and I woke up one morning through a deliberate dreaming technique, and I was like, flower delivery guy. So I went to the store, bought a bouquet of sunflowers, printed out a copy of my resume, printed out a fake invoice, put them on a clipboard, dressed up in my finest suit, put a pair of bibs on over the top of them, drove to the company, went through security, flowers for Jessica, I will leave the last name out, even though I let it slip on camera once before at JSOU. But anyways, I get through security, go up the elevator, get to the third floor reception area, and I walk in with the flowers, and the woman said, and I said, flowers for Jessica. And she said, okay, well, I'll call her. That was problem number one. In my mind, when I played this out the first time, I was going to get to go to Jessica's office to deliver the flowers, and we would have a nice one-on-one conversation, at which point I would convince her that I would be the best sales candidate for this job. It didn't work that way. Jessica came to me in this very public lobby with a lot of people moving around the environment, right? So I give her the flowers, and she's like, oh, who are they from? I said, oh, I don't know. There should be a card in there somewhere. Not realizing that, I'd written a card that said, thank you for taking the time to review my resume. I appreciate the opportunity, Nathan Schwagler. It had kind of fallen down into the bouquet a little bit, so she's kind of like digging for that. I start taking off my suit, and so the reception lady starts laughing and clapping. At which point, other people turn. It becomes like a scene now, right? It's like a lot of people looking and laughing and clapping, and poor Jessica becomes increasingly more red. Darker and darker shade of red in her face, right? At which point I finally give the suit off, and and I give her my resume, and I say, thank you so much for taking the time to review my credentials. If you have time now, I'd love to talk to you about the opportunity. I'll go to these great lengths to get this meeting with you. I'll put the same energy and passion into getting business with our clients, etc. And I basically asked her for an appointment, and she froze. Said nothing. And it got awkward because we were just staring at each other now for a couple of seconds. She says nothing. I killed her, right? And then at some point she starts to back off a little bit towards the door. And I said, if now's not a good time, maybe we could schedule a call, or some follow-up next week, And she just kind of nods her head and walks away. Well, not the outcome I was looking for, but I grabbed my stuff and I started walking towards the door, and I turned around and said, oh, by the way, thanks for not calling security. I get in the elevator, ride down, and I walk out to my car, and I felt like, Muhammad Ali, champion boxer or something. Like I did it. I had this idea and it worked, So I make a phone call a week later to find out, to contact Jessica. And the hiring manager said, is this Nathan Schwagler? I said, well, yes it is. And I'm thinking to myself, ooh, they've been expecting my call. I have leverage. I'm going to get a raise, And she says, hold on, I'll transfer you. I said, okay. care to whisper. So Steve gets on the phone. Steve is the head of security at this particular technology company. And Steve says, hey, I don't care what your story is. You need to tell me that you understand that you can never call here or show up on the premises again. Let me explain. I told him what I did, told him why I did it, and he says, I don't care. You made my team look bad, and you made somebody on the third floor feel really uncomfortable. I hadn't thought about that. The second and third order effects of my design became manifest in a very kind of rude way. I had not taken into consideration at all the environment into which I was walking. A technology company post 9/11. You can't get away with this stuff, you know, in certain places. Some you can, some you can't, but I wasn't asking the questions, right? I was singularly focused on my goal. I reverse engineered a desired end state backwards, and my plan worked well, but offered no strategic upside. I succeeded tactically, yet failed strategically. It's a huge design blunder, but an incredible confidence builder as well. Because I realized I could do things, right? So the learning process of that journey therefore validated the journey itself, even though I didn't get to where I wanted to go. Just to put a bow on it, because I'm sure I'm over time. Some number of a year or two later, I'm then working as an administrator, graduate assistant in a business school. And Great Recession happens. And my boss is the interface between, in the Office of Employer Relations, companies mediated through them in order to get access to students to hire them. And she's on these careerbuilder.com newsletter and realizes that they're looking for stories about creative students who've gotten their foot in the door because the market was way out of whack. Tons of job seekers, no jobs. You got to be creative with how you're going to get your foot in the door. She knows the story about the flower delivery guy, and she says, hey, Nate, you did that thing with the flowers. Do you want to be in touch with the Career Builder people? Said, yeah, sure. Did a quick interview, put it up on their blog. To this day, I get unsolicited job offers from companies who've read that blog post and say, we're looking for that kind of entrepreneurial spirit and creative energy in our company. You want to come work with us? So the thing that didn't get me the job now gave me unlimited numbers of job offers from companies I don't want to work for, right? Or I have no interest in, right? Again, these unintended consequences of design. Back to the point about we need to be reflective about not just the sort of the creative, celebratory nature of the eureka moment and sort of creativity as being an inherently good thing, but instead of creativity is just a thing, and it can manifest itself and does manifest itself in sort of positive and negative behaviors and outcomes based on where you're looking. That's my design failure.
Want me to go? I cannot beat this, indeed. I mean, I cannot beat that. I mean, and every time I'm presenting him and we're having a pint, I'm like, you got to tell this story. So it's an amazing one. I would say that since some of us here like to write that CFC has the best design education program in the world, first time I worked there as a facilitator, I thought that the students really had an amazing knowledge base and all that. So I arrived there with, advanced facilitation and all that. And it took me like 3 days to discover that we did not even have the same meaning of the word understanding. So they had to do an exercise during 3 days and to come up with something, and in the end they were just producing a grocery list of facts in West Africa, and I'm like, okay, no, we got a problem here. So I would say, yeah, that's my personal, and I wasn't sure after that I wanted to do it again, to the point that what's being more successful is that right now when I facilitate, I spend the first 90 minutes just to manage expectations. And to let them how they will feel in this process and all that, because they are so not used to be not in control of where it's going to go. And it worked well this year. I think that the top failure was met by Paul Mitchell, the vice dean, when he tried to introduce this to the colonels, and he wanted to use Stanford the metas and using stuff like crafts and play and Legos. And the students just totally disrupted his exercise. They just started to play like kids with the materials, and yeah. So yeah, we both have design PTSD.
I'll just, of course, I can't help myself, so I'll say one thing. I argue with you, Philippe. I disagree with your assumption that the community is converging, and I encourage all of you to keep looking for differences, and that's also the question to the curiosity that you raised before the previous panel. There are differences in the community. There are even differences in the approaches of the three of you and how you teach design. I mean, there are three, I don't know if all of you know because they didn't introduce themselves properly, but you have Canadian Forces College here, JSOU, Joint Special Operations University.
As a private citizen.
As a private citizen,
Via
but
alternate
still,
corporation.
right, sorry. And you have the Marine Corps University, right? And they talked about three different approaches how to do design with their students. So there is divergence, and I think we need to keep looking for that divergence and not the other way around.
No, Ofra, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant by that. What I meant is that indeed we all have different approaches and a way of looking things, but there's a minimal convergence happening. The simple fact that we get together now every year means that there's minimal convergence. I mean, there's something that links us together enough, I think, to produce something together without being something that is as a doctrine. That's not what I have in mind. And something that, yeah, you should see a divergence into the final product. Indeed, but I think that to build something together, you need minimal conversion. You can call it a paradigm, if you will, but I think there's at least this. You know, you can call this a movement. It might not be all in the same directions, but you know, we're all into something that we call design. And I think that we moved away from advocating a single model or something like that.
Important to remember.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.